Well, welcome everyone. We're so grateful to join you this afternoon and to talk a bit about this important topic of activity planning for students for spring and summer. A couple of things to orient you today. Lisa Bain Carlton, Julie Ritchie, and I will be talking with you over the next hour or so. As is the case with so many Zooms, there's a chat box, so please feel free to share questions that you have as they come up. Julie will be trying as best as we can to keep up with those and answer those. And if there are questions that are pertinent or meaningful, potentially for the entire group, she'll flag Lisa or I to make sure we cover those. As we always do, we'll be sending a follow-up note with a recorded version of this webinar. And we'll share with everyone the link for opportunities that we've assembled, as well as our guide to summer planning. So we'll dive in now. I think most everyone on today's webinar knows a little bit about College Matchpoint. We've worked with students and families over the last 12 years. And we've really been focused since when Lisa started the company on helping students engage with their interests, their aptitudes, and their motivators. Our goal in every step of our work with students is to make sure we're preparing them to thrive in high school, in college, and in their first career. And we feel like today's topic is one of our favorite topics because it really is about how students can make choices in order to move towards that goal. Now, a little bit of context. At College Matchpoint, we talk a lot about engaged students, and that term is a term that the Gallup organization in October of 2019 really did a fair amount of research on. And what was encouraging is their research shows that students who are deeply engaged in high school are 2.5 times more likely to thrive in high school. But even more important, at this moment of COVID and at this moment of online learning, students who are deeply engaged are 4.5 times more likely to be hopeful about the future. And so in our conversation today, we really want to keep a focus on what does it mean to help those students engage.
And so we know that many of you have questions about what do colleges want? What are they looking for? And so we thought that maybe it would be good to frame the conversation and just kind of try to answer that question up front. Bob and I both, and I think our whole team believes that engagement is just good for students. But when colleges are looking at the engagement or the activity that a student has done, I think there's kind of 3 primary things they're looking for. There's certainly others, but these I think encapsulate a lot of it. One is, can you tell, is it apparent what the student's interest is from their engagement? And this is going to go both in terms of their major, and their academic interests. So their coursework should sort of show what they're ultimately hoping to study, and some of their activities should show that. And we'll talk about that as we go along today. Another one that I think has shifted some, we're seeing some shift here. What issue or problem does this student want to solve for the common good? Now, we've seen a lot of focus on community service and, for lack of a better word, sort of running the hours bucket up. I got 100 hours or whatever. I think we're really moving away from that. I think what colleges want to know is 100 hours is awesome, for sure. But what was it that you wanted to solve in those 100 hours? So if there are a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, that doesn't really tell a college what you care about, what problem in the world you're passionate about and would like to solve. And the last one is, does the student exhibit skills in working with others in leadership? I think this also is something that we're really seeing shifting. Colleges want to know that the student that's coming on their campus knows how to get along with other people, has a certain level of character in their interactions with other people, and they really would like to see leadership. Now, that term does not mean they have to be the president of the student council, but they're willing to step up to take some initiative, to own something. That could be in a formal way, that could be in the family, that can be in a job, lots of different places. But I think at the end of the day, that's what they want to see. And that's what they're looking for when they look at a student's engagement. There are now, those are the things that are true for every student. Those, no matter what college, no matter what range of college you're applying to, okay? And there are some different trends that we're seeing in highly selective colleges. This session is not on highly selective colleges, but we wanted to flag this because we think it's so important for, we know that many families, unfortunately, really look at those, a top, the very top schools and are not as interested in maybe some of the other schools. And we just want you to know what they're looking for, because we have never seen this matter more than like even this year. We're seeing it a ton. That students are engaging at the regional, state, and national level, which means they might be in math competitions, or they may have been in something, it's competitive. Basically, they've made it up in whatever it is they do at something outside just the local school level. Colleges want to see issues that the students are committed to. And if you're when we say highly selective, we're talking about schools that have 30% or less acceptance rate. So most students are not applying to just those colleges, and they certainly shouldn't be. No student should just be applying to just those colleges, actually. But the difference here is that they actually leave a legacy, okay? So they did something that had enough impact that when you go, you're like, oh, that's what so-and-so did. With STEM students, that they have an extensive multi-year engagement with a portfolio. So in other words, that's got to be something that's grown over time, and they've got to have a tangible portfolio with that. Finally, we're seeing that independent research is becoming the norm in the highly selective schools. So like I said, we're not going to spin this because this is a lot. And the truth is, the reason they're highly selective is because most high school students aren't doing this and don't need to do this. But we did want to throw that out there as we get talking, so that you can kind of locate yourself in kind of, what you're thinking about and your student is thinking about.
One quick comment on the STEM students and their multi-year engagement with portfolio. One of the most common examples of that would be students focused on computer science, building out a GitHub profile over multiple years in their high school experience. So just to fill in that blank for students who are targeting highly selective schools.
Now, the good news is, we've now been in this COVID world for almost a year. It's hard to believe. This time last year, our team was scrambling around, in March, thinking, oh my gosh, what are these students going to do for the summer? And that's kind of how this originated, where we've actually become kind of a leader nationally in providing this guide to summer experiences. And really, honestly, we were just a team trying to pull together resources for our students. The good news is most of them found really good stuff to do, and students can find engagement that matches with their interests, even with all the shifts in COVID. So if anything, I kind of thought and I think Bob and Julie might concur, that many of the kids did more interesting stuff because they had to think outside the box. So now the second piece of that is, it absolutely requires initiative on the student's part. And I should have added another bullet. It does typically, or often, require a little bit more of you as parents to help them connect to things. So we're not seeing as many there are, like, if they're going to get an internship, it is for sure going to be with someone who knows you, because now it's even more work than it was before. So I would say that it requires initiative on the part of the student and support from the parent. And the last thing is, this got cut off just a little bit, but colleges are shifting away from service hours, like I said, to a commitment to some kind of issue or problem in the community. And that actually has worked to a lot of our students' advantage, because I think students are really seeing a lot of things in the world that they're passionate about, that they care about, and really jumped in. And so overall, I guess we just want to say that we work with a lot of students, and we also, provided this information to consultants all over the country. And I think all of us have been pleasantly surprised at how many opportunities there are. So that's the good news that we kind of start this conversation with.
The other thing to jump in here is that Lisa, Julie, and I have been on countless webinars with admissions directors. And what we've heard again and again is that they are so sensitive to the fact that spring and summer planning is so challenging for kids. What they're interested in oftentimes is how did the student respond to the changes, because they are keenly aware of how challenging this is. Now, parents and students often ask, okay, this is confusing. We've learned a lot from the last couple of years. Colleges are prioritizing this. Where should I start? And we are firm believers that a student should start based on where they're engaged, where their aptitudes, their interests, their motivators have really driven them to engage to date. We are fundamentally opposed to what are sometimes called recipe resumes. They sort of float around as if this is the perfect resume to get a student into Rice or to USC or Caltech. So we really want to start with where the student is and where they're engaged. We also believe that engagement is a fabulous opportunity for a student to explore, particularly for 9th and 10th graders, for them to identify new areas of interest that they want to explore, even if at the end of that exploration they decide, I'm not really interested in this for the long term. And then finally, as students develop skills, they develop portfolios, they're involved in some initial leadership, to enhance, to identify where they want to build on and where they found that energy from their engagement, which really motivates them. Now,
and I want to add one thing to that Bob just said, which is in terms of exploring, I think that's a spot where we can get stuck easily, because all of us as adults will now ask students things like, what's your passion? What do you want to do? Those kind of things. I can't stress enough letting the student explore and having some freedom to do that, even if maybe in the back of your head, like that's probably not it. I think students almost always come to that, but they almost always learn something that's directional to what they might be interested in.
Okay, we're lucky on today's webinar. We have a mix of parents and students who are 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. And not to oversimplify it, but there are some differences in terms of engagement and activities by grade. We oftentimes find that freshmen are really focused, particularly in this mix of online and offline learning, in terms of being more involved in a number of different activities, that they're exploring ways to really become high school students, to orient themselves, and they really are, as Lisa said, exploring. 10th graders are often at a phase where they're testing out, I think I'm actually interested in this. That may be a major, that may be an area of what colleges refer to as intellectual curiosity, a topic that so animates a student that they just dive in and go as deep as they can. The 10th grade is oftentimes a little more self-driven. And we oftentimes find that 10th graders can sometimes be super, super creative in identifying smaller projects along the way that help really nurture their engagement. Which takes us to 11th graders. Many 11th graders are at a time developmentally and their involvement as a high schooler where they're starting to show initiative, where they're looking at that legacy that Lisa talked about before. Now, there are plenty of 9th graders who are focused on impact from the beginning, and there are plenty of 11th graders who are still exploring a new area of interest. But at a high level, we wanted to give you a sense, based on where your student is in high school, some of the typical venues or routes that different students are on in each year. Now, many of you may have seen that Lisa and I have developed this model. We call it the I-4 model. It's a fairly simple mnemonic to help sort of create a compass, if you will, to guide a student's consideration of engagement. The 4 I's are interest, involvement, initiative, and impact. In the follow-up notes, we'll include our guide to this, but we just really want to stress that the compass for this, the guide for this, are the students' aptitudes, skills, and motivations. They have to be the driver of this, rather than thinking, and we always are uncomfortable with this question, will this look good to colleges? That's not a good place to start. Where all students need to start is, what is it about who I am, my aptitudes, skills, and motivations that would drive me to be more engaged here? Before we turn to the next section, Julie, are there any questions that have come up so far that you think you want to have Lisa or I tackle?
Well, one of the things that I was just answering, but I think it would be important to tackle, is getting a job. Like getting a job, you know, someone was saying that's probably the only thing my kid can do. And I want you to like maybe underscore like how great getting a job can be.
Getting a job is a fantastic, awesome. Like, I mean, and I think if we look at some of our students, jobs have really been successful for many of them. One of our students worked at a local ice cream place, just, you know, he was a scooper, but then the ice cream store started supplying grocery stores, and he actually had an interest in business and marketing, and he was able to become the person who like set up the displays in the grocery stores and things like that. So he kept that job over a number of years, and it really, really helped him. I also was working with a young woman recently who's had a job with a lot of responsibility over a number of years. And I don't think she realized everything she was learning out of it. So we kind of took it apart, and we're like, because she also wants to do business. And I was like, okay, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. No, it'd be great if we could just ever so slightly step that up for this 11th grade, so after 11th grade. But now she has this long relationship with this place. So the chances that they would let her do that are pretty likely. So I think jobs are fabulous. Would you want to add anything to that, Bob?
Yeah, 2 other things. One, jobs are obviously just good for teenagers. They help many students develop a sense of personal responsibility, of time management. Again, we are just profound believers that if a student can get more deeply engaged and be motivated with it, that it's just a good thing. And the second thing I would reiterate is, particularly in this period of a pandemic, we have seen many students take jobs and then get more involved in the company that they work for in terms of how they're responding to the pandemic. It may be some stores that are shifting to curbside or helping orders for elderly or those at risk. It may be some people who are working in their family's business, and that family's business is responding to COVID. But I think we really want to reiterate, a student taking a job can be a huge opportunity for initiative and impact. Lisa, do you want to go through the types of programs that students are looking at?
Absolutely. And so there's a multitude of ways that students can be engaged and in, you know, more formalized, you know, programs during the summer. The old traditional one that most people think of is university-based programs, which are programs on university campuses, online classes, independent projects, career-related, and that could include jobs, that can include internships, and community service. And so we're going to kind of break these out, because I think one of the really cool things that happened with COVID, I think someone else had a question about fee-based, is that really, you know, colleges have looked at some of the programs, especially as kids get older and should be able to have more agency in what they're doing, you know, as perhaps pay to play, right? In other words, you pay for it. Now, I think that what we have learned is that many students do really, really well if we talk about university-based programs, especially in the younger years. Those can be great opportunities for them. Bob, you want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
Thanks. Can be great opportunities for students, especially in the younger years, to explore because they really get to be on a college campus. It teaches them something about that. So if a family's budget allows, I think that those can be really good in the younger years and can allow students to really learn about college in a way they might not be able to from some other things. And also maybe expose them to some really specialized curriculum that they might not get anywhere else. Now, these programs used to all kind of be called pre-college programs. But what happened during COVID is we've really got a whole bunch of different types of programs because some places are offering them online, some places are offering them in person or hoping to offer them in person, and some places are offering hybrids. And so what was a pretty distinct category has now become a little bit of an overall hybrid, if you will. But I'm going to give you a few examples. For example, there's a program, on an ancient Greek theater at Brown that, is currently in person or hybrid. So you could do it either way. The truth is that right now, colleges don't know if they're going to be able to do these programs in person or not. And so they're kind of covering themselves. One way to do that is they can have the in-person and the online version, and they're kind of covered. So that's one option that we're seeing with colleges happening right now. And another option is just strictly online. So like Michigan has got a math science program that's strictly online. Tufts has one that's strictly online. One thing that the online programs have also done is bring the cost down, right? So students who maybe these programs weren't in their family budget before, they are more affordable now. And I saw a really large, I definitely would shop summer programs because you're going to really see some differences in the fee structure. And I think some colleges were like, I'm going to keep my price, and other colleges were like, I'm going to bring it down to fill it. One thing I want to say here is that a lot of families, and it's understandably why, think, oh, I'm going to go to the program at Tufts and that'll make it more likely for me to get into Tufts. That typically is not the case. You should if you're going to do a university-based program, you should follow doing a program that really matches your students' interests, because these programs are best for students who are trying to explore different academic interests that are maybe a little more specialized, or they really want to get the chance to learn from a professor or that kind of thing. So I would advise you to go more at what your students interested in. We sadly don't see that it's not going to hurt them at that school, but it isn't typically a bump at all in that way.
Great.
Go ahead, Bob, sorry.
Yeah, one of the categories of engagement that we saw most significantly in response to COVID was a new category of online course platforms. They're primarily asynchronous. They're a mix of professors and industry leading instructors. They require initiative. They usually are self-paced and put an emphasis on the student being able to do some skill or project. The good news is they oftentimes are exceptionally affordable. Before we show you examples, we want to give you a couple of suggestions specifically with these online course platforms to consider. One, student learning style. As I said, these courses are asynchronous. If a student struggles with asynchronous courses, if a student really needs the schedule and the accountability, it can be really difficult. The second thing is that most of these classes obviously do not support college credit. They're not the college-based programs that Lisa mentioned. Now, to give you a couple of examples, there are two platforms that actually grew out of college consortiums, Coursera and edX. The easiest way to think about these is they're marketplaces where colleges and universities will publish and support an online class. These classes sometimes are synchronous with lecture, but they're mostly asynchronous. Both platforms are really rich with classes in the humanities, in STEM, in social sciences, in creative writing. And the other thing we would say is we had students this past summer who really were able to more deeply engage in an area of interest and take a college level class, not for credit, but that really sparked their excitement about that subject area. The second category of online course platforms are platforms that are more focused on skills. They're more focused on helping a student develop or deepen their skills in an area of interest. These are 4 of them. Many students who are focused on the languages oftentimes consider taking an online class through LanguageBird. It's sort of like Duolingo on steroids. There's a fabulous platform called Code Academy that a lot of students utilize for computer science or data science classes. And then there are 2 very skills-based platforms, Udemy and Udacity. And all of these are really rich with classes, oftentimes taught by either college professors or subject matter experts. Now, Lisa, we've had a couple of questions already about independent projects. Could you give folks a little bit of a sense of what they are and how they might fit for a student?
Absolutely. Although I want to say one thing about the skill-based and online platforms, because that really wasn't something that we had students doing until last year. And part of my job is kind of to review each student's resume. And one of the things that those platforms really helped with a lot is a concept that some of you, depending on where you are in this process, may or may not be familiar with. And it's called Fit to Major. In other words, colleges are looking at students' activities to ultimately determine the student's fit for their major. Now, please understand what I'm saying. We absolutely have students who don't have a declared major going to college. But if they're going to be, say, in business or the natural sciences or pre-med or engineering or computer science or nursing, you know, those are just a few. Even communications, having some background in that is exceptionally important, especially here if for students who are kind of UT or bust, it's very important. So one of the great things that these courses did, and they're very affordable, you can see the, you know, the prices on them, is it allowed students to learn some in-depth knowledge that was maybe skill-based or from an industry leader, with the student taking some initiative. The other thing this helps students a lot with when they get further in the college process is that when they go to write those essays, they have a little bit of something else to write about. So this actually, to me, was one of the sweetest spots that we had last year. Super affordable. Students can have their job, do whatever else they're doing, but it is important to remember that while generalist experience is great and teaches a ton of things, it is important for students to have some things that show their major. That's going to be critical, especially at big state universities. And so I just wanted to comment that this can be a super helpful way to do that. Now let's talk about independent projects. So independent projects is a very broad category, which is often kind of, you know, hard to wrap your head around, but it's the student delving into their academic area of interest. And the student needs to have some sort of goal in mind with their independent project. The best independent projects are done with a mentor. Some of our local schools have a vehicle to do independent projects. And I'm going to give you a few examples of those. I think like there are, the IB program has the long paper that the kids do in senior year. That is an independent project. It's 20 pages. So I often say to students who are in an IB program, hey, really think about what you want to do with that. And let's see if that can't line up with some of your interests, because that's an incredible opportunity. Now, I know what's going through your head. If you have a student in that, you're thinking, yes, but it's not done before they apply. Doesn't matter, because we already know what they're doing, so we can put that in there and tell what's going to happen going forward. Other schools have an opportunity to work on independent projects in specific classes, like a computer science class, or I have a student who's done a whole series of kind of graphic design classes, and she's able to do an independent project. A lot of schools don't, okay? So now let's talk about that. So there are schools that really don't have any way for a student to do an independent project. At this point, a couple things can be helpful. Some students over the years have found mentors at UT who were willing to mentor them. Some students had, maybe a teacher who was willing. For example, I had a student who was really interested in a certain part of biology that she was learning, and her teacher mentored her through an independent project. There also are now programs that will match students with mentors for independent projects. Again, you've got the option of something that doesn't cost anything, and this obviously is going to cost money. I think these programs are, from our experience with the students who have done them, they take a lot of time, but they're also really are teaching kids at a college level about research. We are finding that research seems to be research and great grades with great rigor seem to be kind of some of the really important things for students who are going very selective. But we have students doing research who aren't necessarily doing that. I think students feel super proud when they've dug in an area that they're really interested in. So I had a young man who was really interested in historic preservation in Austin. And so I don't know how he got the mentor. I can't remember right now. But so he went to all these historic sites in Austin and learned all about how they became historical sites. And then he was gathering data for someone in the city. So there's a lot of different opportunities. The city of Austin has some really good programs in the summer where students can get matched in areas of interest as well. So many different ways to go at this. I would say our experience, and you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, absent a mentor or someone to help the student sort of put some guardrails on, okay, what will success look like when you do this project? I'm going to have a long paper that explains X. I'm going to make a presentation to this group. I had another student who helped a local company they were opening stores that were socially responsible businesses. And so she helped with this. So, I'm going to help get the store open. But knowing what the end game is really the key to a successful independent project. And I would argue, having done this many, many years, that without an adult mentor, I think this is rough. So I do think that there's a few kids who could pull that off, but most students, and I think they learn a lot more with a mentor, because part of independent research is that you're learning and you're going to need to have someone to walk beside you in that. So one summer option that was not even on the radar 3 or 4 years ago, but has come big time on the radar in the last few years, is these programs that match students with, think about it, makes perfect sense, with mentors who are college professors, often at small liberal arts schools or other universities, and help the student come up with their idea and then take that forward. And those programs are competitive. And so you have to apply and you have to have a little bit of an idea, and they all vary. There's some that are a little more STEM focused, some that are a little more humanities focused, some that are, and so we include these in our guide. I don't think they're for everybody, but I do think they're an interesting option that has come on the radar for sure.
Julie, before we move on to career-related activities, are there any questions that have come up that you think would be helpful for the whole group?
I think I've answered them in the Q&A, Bob.
Great, thanks. So Lisa mentioned before the importance of career-related activities. One of the families asked about students having jobs. We think career-related activities are great for a student to explore, to enhance. We think they're great opportunities for initiative and impact. And they mix with some of the programs that we talked about before, university-based programs. online courses, even independent projects. We're working with one student who's sort of strung from their freshman year of high school, now going into their senior year, a set of activities that was driven by their profound interest at the intersection of two very complex topics. And that will culminate in an internship this summer. Now, we always want to be clear with families, an internship is not what a college student or an adult might think of as an internship. It typically is not 12 weeks in the summer, 45 hours a week. It is oftentimes a support role. And as Lisa mentioned, it almost always comes from mom and dad's network. Now, we think it's important that the student be the point of outreach and engagement, but these internships are really valuable for a student to confirm her interest in international relations, global relations, for a student to really get a feel for what finance might entail. Many of you might know we're huge fans of informational interviews. We have an ebook on it that includes a worksheet for students. We just think it's invaluable, even if it's a career area that mom or dad are in, for a student to hear from an adult who's in that area. So the student can really explore, what major might I be signing up for 4 years, and what does that translate to what my adult life will look like? As we said, in both cases, it's going to require some coordination with mom and dad, and it's going to require mom and dad looking at their own personal and professional network to reach out and say, hey, I know you can't believe it, but my daughter is actually applying for college now, and she's looking at a career in your area, ... These career-related areas are oftentimes things that need to be on your radar, as is the case for some of these other competitive programs. In late January, February, you want to get this firmed up by March. Because you don't want a student looking around in June and thinking, what am I going to do? Now, Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about community service?
Absolutely. So I think COVID has provided so many new ways for students to do community service. And I've been super impressed at what students have come up with. From, delivering groceries to mask making to, providing things for frontline workers to taking food to hospitals, just to taking care of their own siblings, right? Like, so things that are very close to home, all the way to, things that impact the community. And colleges do care about students' responsibilities at home too. And I think especially when we look at the time frame that for many of these students, COVID is going to have impacted a significant portion of their high school. I think that piece is really critical. Again, community service is very similar. I was thinking to, really everything we've been saying, which is it needs to be in an area that a student is actually passionate about and cares about. Like, and you could always see it in a student's eye when you're talking about it. Like, I was working with a student who as a real commitment to students with learning disabilities. And so, she just really lights up when she talks about the different things that she can do with that, or helping children, or if a student is really athletic, what is the way that they can help other students who are really, athletic, can they, now that we have so many kids at home all the time, could they create a little neighborhood sports league, those kind of things. That shows leadership, initiative, so it's not, so those kind of things can be great ways to show their interests. I think that one of the most important things, I'll say two really important things. One is that at a baseline, community service is showing empathy, resilience, and character, which are incredibly important in this process. Okay, so that's kind of baseline. Colleges are, when they look at these kind of activities, one of the colleges have, ways that they evaluate students. They're keenly aware of wanting to bring good people of good character to their colleges. Okay, that is absolutely important to them. The other piece of this is, and where I think we're moving in some of this is, I'm going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I got all these hours. I don't know that ever, it's always been hard to communicate in a college application is what I would say. I think we've stepped it up now. And so it's really important for students to think about, and this is another place you can help them. Like if there was one, I mean, I ask this to kids all the time. If there was one problem, 3 problems in the world that you could solve, what would you want them to be? And then, they'll come up with a wide range of things. And then after that question, okay, let's think about what you maybe could do on one of those, right? Like, and start small, and then it can build out. But I think Bob and I are just huge believers in community service and reaching out in one's community just as an important value in life. But I also believe that it teaches kids a lot of the skills that are going to translate to helping them being successful in college and to being good citizens. And it definitely is not going to hurt their college application in any way. Now, one of the things, again, that we were kind of pleasantly surprised in COVID is there's a lot of cool online options for volunteering that we honestly never knew about till last year. There's a really great thing with the Smithsonian where you can be a researcher. Learning Alley is a site that helps students with learning disabilities, and students can participate there by being readers and different things. There's a program called, what is it, Julie, Zooniverse?
Yeah.
There was a zoo one that was really cool. Well, I don't know. All I remember is I had a student last year. It's like, I got to go count the penguins, like he was helping with the research on penguins. And so we really found last year that, and of course, we don't want kids doing everything online. None of us want kids doing everything online. But we were surprised that our students they did things in their neighborhoods and like that. But there was a group of students that really kind of enjoyed some of the online community service they did. And it was really pretty cool. So again, there's multiple opportunities. Great thing about community service done well, you could do your fit to major activity. You could do leadership. You can show character. You can grow a pretty big project with it if you want to. You could check every single box with this and never spend a dime. So there is absolutely ways really throughout everything we've been talking about to do, different options that don't have to be expensive. So I think that that's really important. But we were really kind of, in the beginning of the summer, like, oh, what are they going to be able to do for this? I would caution some of you. I know that many students, and I think they're great organizations, are involved in organizations that have the students doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Try to focus it, like NCL, Men's Service League, things like that. Or Young Men's Service League, try to get those as narrow as you can as the students get older. So sort of follow that same arc that Bob was talking about, like engage, explore. But by the time they get to like 10th grade, see if you can narrow it a little bit so that it's going to show a little passion for one, kind of issue or something that I think, and I also think that just helps students, again, that's good for the college process, but also just makes sense. So I would encourage you to do that as you're thinking about volunteer work. I'm also a huge fan of family volunteer work. I think that is a great thing to do with the teenager. So you could also, do some activities as a family.
One other comment about community service. Now more than ever, we've seen that students more deeply engaging in the common good and helping folks in this pandemic, it gives them so much hope for the future. Mm-hmm. It allows them to look beyond their own experience. We heard from countless families that community service actually helped the parents feel more hopeful about the future. So when we helped students last spring who the pandemic totally forced a reset, we actually found that community service was a crucial ingredient in almost every student's plan, because we found that it began a process of them more deeply engaging in what it meant to be part of a community during a pandemic.
And I think that honestly, the students are more aware of the needs in the community during this time. I mean, it's impacted them, it's impacted their friends, it's impacted their grandparents, it's impacted people's jobs. Like I've been working with kids, I guess it'll be 13 years, and I don't know that I've ever seen a time where I feel like students sometimes, I mean, I'm sad about this, but are deeply aware of things that are difficult for people. And so I think feeling like they have some ability to impact the world does, like Bob said, gives them some hope and makes them feel like they matter and they can matter. And I think that's super important. So we have on our website, we have all of the kinds of opportunities that we've been talking about, and we update it all the time. So as whenever we hear about something new, we update it. And so you can just go on our website and there's a banner at the very top. It goes down a long way. So just keep scrolling, and it's the never ending web page. And by the end of the summer, it'll really be, we work hard to try to keep the guide updated. That will from time to time have a dead link here or there. Feel free to let us know. But this has really become kind of a labor of love that our team is excited about, because we do believe that engagement is such an important part of the process for success in college. Not get your success in college, not getting into college, but actually being successful in college. How would you evaluate your options? So there's a lot of great options out there. I think one is to think about, what is your student really good at, right? What are their kind of innate aptitudes? We use a test called Use Science with our students. What motivates them? Like, what are their motivators? What are they interested in? How do they learn? Are they like a student who likes to be on the go and they want to be out and about? Then don't tell them to do, they probably aren't going to love doing online volunteering. But for a more shy student who never kind of wanted to join, that can be a great opportunity. So sort of think about your student and who they are and what their aptitudes and motivators are. Second, if you may not know, depending on where you are in the process, if they have a little bit of idea of what they may want to study, great way to fit some of this activity to that. And it's important. Where can they develop new skills? You know, we are a huge believer in developing skills, and that can be from learning to look adult in the eye and talk to them, to giving your elevator pitch, to picking up the phone and calling someone, to learning how to do a really complicated computer program, and everything in the middle. So where could they develop new skills? Because again, students feel good about themselves and feel resilient when they're learning new skills. And where can they make a positive impact on others? What are the opportunities within your own little circle? And then as you think your way out of that circle, that they can make an impact on others. And finally, always the important question for parents, because I think you have such an important role here. And I just, hats off to parents. Bob and I were saying today, we're empty nesters. We just have such kind of awe at what all of you, this whole pandemic has been tough on parents and on families, and our hats are off to all of you for sure. Notice your students' interests. Notice when they get that little sparkle in their eye, if they're tinkering with something, if they're reading something that they want to tell you more about, if they have that one subject that they can't stop learning about. Show enthusiasm, even if it's not the thing you're interested in, because that they may have their own path here. Allow them to experiment. Don't get too focused on the end goal. Let them experiment and evolve. They're very, very young. They're going to make lots of different choices along the way. Help them with connections. I think as we look at our students who have been able to access really good engagement, their parents have helped them, and so I do think that's important. Coach them through how to communicate. So rather than calling the person for them, show them how to do it. We, in our informational interview guide, we actually show the kids like how to write an email to an adult. What would you say if you were going to call someone? What kind of questions? So they need, now not every student, some students are going to be fantastic at this naturally. But if you think that may be hard for your student, coach them through that. And I will say, there are students that are so shy, I'll say, you know what? why don't you have your parent come with you if they're that? Now, that's my last resort, but for some kids, that may be the way that they would be most comfortable. So you're going to know that about your student. Have appropriate expectations. I was talking to a mom the other day and I just loved it. And she said, we were talking about what he was going to do in the summer. And she said, that's as far as he's going to go. And I said, and isn't that great that we all know it? Because he's going to love what he's doing. So, I think knowing your own student and know what's going to bring them joy, what their kind of limit is, and where they're going to be like, no way am I going to do some kind of independent project, right? Like every student is not going to do that. And so you're going to have the correct expectations for your kids. A couple things we didn't mention that I wanted to mention. One is, as you think about engagement, the currency in college is hours. And so a lot of times parents will ask us, right, but like, back when kids were always in school and things like that, like what about school clubs and things like that? When we go to do resumes for students for college, many of the like school clubs, are maybe like a half an hour every other week or something like that. And it usually doesn't pop. A student should be in a club because they think it's really interesting and they love it. That's why they should join a club. Some clubs, are take up more than that for sure. Like, and certainly, different activities. But I do want to just put out there that one thing we really are noticing is non-traditional activities rock. Like they definitely do the job. So if your student isn't the joiner, that you can be very engaged and not necessarily join a bunch of, activities. And honestly, those students are maybe in a little bit better position right now since there's not as much of that to join. But I did just want to mention that because I think it's important because that's changed a lot from when we all went to school. The biggest thing was, could you be the student council president or the editor of the yearbook or just fill up a bunch of slots? That really, there's 10 slots on most applications. So it's not a lot of slots. Many kids don't fill that, but the trick is to fill it with depth, not with just, I joined the French club or something like that. We are happy to answer questions. If you guys have any additional questions, we really appreciate y'all coming out on a dreary Sunday afternoon here in Austin, Texas. Julie, do we have any questions?
Not any new ones. If you guys have any new questions, put them in the Q&A.
Lisa, I have a question that I got texted to me. And
okay.
That's a parent asking me about programs that have deadlines and essays and competitive applications. I know that can be very specific to the program, but can you talk a little bit about some of the university-based programs that might have a deadline in January or February or March and what that involves for a student?
It's a huge range. There's some programs that are, there's a physics program that I've had a few students apply to. That's actually an international program. I think they take 18 kids from around the world. That's got like multiple rounds and everything. But in general, you're going to find that most applications are open now. And if you want to do a university program, go ahead and apply to that. There's like the Penn medical program is one that is very competitive. There are some that are more competitive than others, but overall, you guys, they're mostly putting the deadlines on there to make sure that they have the number of people. So I wouldn't, if you missed a deadline, I would not write the program off. I would call and see. Many times they will tell you that they will still accept your application. The essays for the summer programs are really to see, is this student actually want to come and do this? That's really the number one point of it, unless the program is really super competitive. And so I think it's time to start looking. If you're looking at those programs, check your deadlines. Have your student write the essay, make sure it's grammatically correct, but it's not the same as like a college essay, except for maybe a few programs. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
So we've got another question, and that is on independent projects. What suggestions do you have for parents who don't have a network where they can connect a student with a possible mentor? Where might she start to help a student who's eager to do an independent project, but the parent doesn't have that connection to a faculty member or a possible mentor?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I know I had a student, sometimes students have really interesting, a little more outlier careers, right? So it's not as easy to find. I was recently working with a student, and so we looked up the professional association for that field. And then we looked it up in Austin, and then we kind of made a list of people in that organization that she might be able to contact, not to see if they would do it, but if there was maybe a grad student in the group or something like that. So I also think that it's worth a stop if your school has a college counselor. There are opportunities. I'm always surprised at what kids get hooked up with from school. So I would definitely also make a stop in. And these are going to vary. Some of them are going to be awesome and some of them are going to be no help at all. But I do think that is another place to go. And then it's just networking too, like asking everybody you know, right? So
one other place that I've seen a couple of students have surprising success is starting with the teacher at their high school who that class ignited their interest in it. Mm-hmm. That teacher may not be able to have the time or the capacity to mentor the student, but they might know colleagues, friends, former professors who might be open to being connected with the student and ultimately be a mentor for an independent project.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I think we've gotten to the end of questions for today. We will be updating on our website, as Lisa mentioned, programs as we learn about them that students might be interested in. We're also spotlighting programs on our Facebook page for those of you that follow us. We'll be following up tomorrow with a link to the archived version of this, as well as the resources that we attached. And we just want to end by thanking all of you and encouraging you to continue to be there as you are so well with your students in this challenging time. We know that it is forcing parents themselves to develop new skills and to really stay motivated. And we're so grateful to work with parents who are so focused on that. So thanks so much. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope you have a great rest of the Sunday and a great week.